welcome to another edition of the Third Intermission Podcast. Yes, if you are hearing this voice correctly, it is the boss man himself. Dave is back in the building. It's been an interesting few weeks for me to take some time off, but you know what? I'm back and I am ready to basically talk puck. Of course, it is going to be a two-man show. This is the first time that Avery and I are actually having a show together since the second season. It's been almost 4 years since we've actually just kicked it on the show together, so it's kind of crazy. You got the right hand of the king in the building himself, aka the Fedora Man, aka Mr. Steal Your Girl, Avery Lewis McDougal in the cut. Avery, what's going on?
Going on, Dave? Yes, it's been very rare that there's ever been a two-man show. It's funny because we've been to events together, we've been to TIFF together, but actually doing a show together, that's a very uncommon thing.
Yeah, it's like having two of the best wrestlers in the world and finally having them as a tag team. The mega powers have finally come together.
Exactly.
This is without all the cocaine and the jealousy and the kayfabe. So,
all right, that was a crazy turn that took.
Dog, you should know this by now, okay? Avery's like the Hulk Hogan of the hockey world.
Hey, why don't you call me the Hogan in this one? Neither of us should want to be the Hogan. Neither of us should want to be Hogan in this.
No. Wait, sorry. Let me rephrase that. We're the Harlem Heat of the hockey world. Okay,
there you go.
Like Avery is Booker T and I'm Stevie Ray. All right, jeez, man. I still didn't even know they were related until maybe 2 or 3 years ago. That was nuts.
Yeah,
that's wildness, man. Absolute wildness. All right, folks. Real talk. We do have a very, very interesting show for you tonight. First things first, we're going to discuss a few things. We're going to leave the Leaf situation till last because, quite frankly, I am a little enraged about this whole situation, and I'm going to try and be as remotely positive as possible regarding the Leafs fuck up last night, the Leafs fuck up on Saturday at Scotiabank Arena. So we're going to talk about that towards the end of the show. We're also going to look into the other playoff series involving the Stars, the Islanders, the Vancouver Canucks, and the Winnipeg Jets, and then of course the Edmonton Oilers playing later on. They will have played at least 2 games by the time of this recording. So hopefully things get a little bit easier, not only if you're a playoff fan, but also a non-Leaf fan in this situation. We're also going to look into the Utah situation as well, as the NHL gets set to make its debut in the state of Utah. I'm going to have Avery talk about that a little bit later. We're also going to look at the PWHL situation, as Montreal has basically enhanced the rivalry between them and the city of Toronto. We're also going to give a certain friend of our show her flowers, as she's accomplished a little piece of history in the PWHL. Lots more to talk about as well. But first things first, we're going to dive into the NHL playoff situation. Like I said, we are a Leaf-centric podcast. However, we're going to save that situation for last, as I have some comments, and also Avery might have a few things to say here and there regarding the Leaf situation. So, first things first, Avery, let's discuss this. The Stars right now are currently down 2-1 against Vegas, as Vegas is looking to try and not only get themselves back into the Cup final, but be the first back-to-back winner of a Stanley Cup since 2016, 2017, when Pittsburgh had done it. Ideally, the Stars have worked towards staying alive in their series, but they're getting outplayed by Mark Stone and the Vegas Golden Knights. What are your thoughts on this, man?
You know what's funny, Dave? People were all talking about, Mark Stone, Mark Stone, Mark Stone, Mike Stone. But Vegas is still a very deep team. This is still a very deep team that runs four lines deep. There's still Jack Eichel. There's still so many weapons on this Vegas roster. Thomas Hurdle, he's still a great back end. So it's not just Mark Stone's been having a big postseason for the Vegas Golden Knights. And I'm not surprised that this team has taken the series to Dallas. They found ways to win on the road. They're up 2-1. I know Dallas got battled back, get a big overtime win to avoid at the time of taping going down 3-0. But anyone surprised that Vegas is finding ways to control this series hasn't been watching enough of the Golden Knights. They're one of the more balanced teams in the league. They're getting great goaltending. So if you're surprised, you really shouldn't be by Vegas leading this series.
Like I ideally, even though you're just 1 year removed from actually winning the whole thing, like Vegas is still, like you said, extremely stacked, and with great goaltending and great defense. Of course, with Alex Petrangelo in the lineup, and then of course you have Jack Eichel in the lineup as well. And with the amount of depth pieces that Vegas has, it's just it's insane to think that this team was going to be an easy write off for a lot of analysts, especially considering how Dallas has been playing. But Joel Pavelski and the Dallas Stars right now are like currently looking at it, and they're probably wondering like, what the hell is happening right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, because again, and don't get me wrong, the Dallas Stars deserve all the praise in the world, be it from Jake Ottinger, Jason Robertson, a great young player, Logan Stankoven having a great season as one of the young talents. You're getting Pavelski turning back the clock at least 10 years on Dallas. So they deserve their due, and they deserved to be that number one team in Western Conference. But
Mm-hmm.
it just I thought it was kind of silly to write off Vegas as a team that would go down easy to Dallas when again it's defending Cup champions. You can't write them off. And even though yes, they had a lot of injuries this year, they've been banged up left, right, and center. This is a team where once again it's been a common theme for Vegas during the entire existence.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody key, either Mark Stone, either a goaltender, somebody's gonna be hurt on Vegas. But even with that, you still can't write them off, even though they go through about 85 injuries a season.
Jeez, I mean, ideally speaking, this series has the potential to go seven. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if it went seven. If say Vegas tries to end it early, then I'm going to be completely shocked the same way. Um, Dallas needs to find a way to just come back into the series and try and make something out of themselves, especially with the fact that like they have great goal scoring with Heskinen and with Johnston as well, and with Pavelski being a great leader on the lineup and everything. Um, I feel that Dallas should be able to get themselves at least somewhat back into the series. But if they keep making, say, unnecessary mistakes in which Vegas can capitalize on, it might be too little, too late come Game 5 when they're basically on their home ice and Vegas is running roughshod on them. So we're going to like excitedly see how things are going to play out with the Dallas Stars going forward. Like, do you like with the way Vegas is playing? Do you see Vegas like closing it out early, or do you see Dallas clawing back and making this an interesting series?
I still see Dallas Stars finding a way to claw it back. I don't see this ending. I agree with you, Dave. I think this is going to be at least 6 games, or I could definitely see Dallas clawing back, making it 7 game series. They're number one team for a reason. They've got a really solid core up front in Dallas, so I definitely see them finding ways to claw back. I mean, one thing that showed me that they have the ability to do that is again winning on the road and winning in probably one of the more hostile buildings in the league in T-Mobile Arena. If you can find a way to get a victory in Vegas, you should be good.
Exactly. So let's keep an eye on that, and we'll see how things go. Um, Another series that kind of caught the eye of fans, and very interestingly enough, have managed to stave off elimination. The New York Islanders managed to get themselves an overtime win back on Saturday, as Matthew Barzal scored in double overtime against Carolina Saturday night, avoiding the sweep. And I really have to sit and ask myself this question: Are the Islanders basically preventing themselves from being cooked, or are they actually finding a way to fight back in the series? Because Carolina has been on a tear in the last 2 years, within the last 2 years.
You know, I I really I really think Carolina is gonna end up I think that series is just a formality, considering the
Mhm.
hole the Islanders already put themselves in.
Yeah.
But good on them for finding a way to battle back and not go quietly. And tonight, my Barzell gets it done. Varlamov makes 42 saves for the Islanders. But I really feel it's just formality. Carolina has too many weapons. They're too deep. They're too good with the team. And right now, Patrick Waugh isn't doing enough to really get this team over the hump. I mean, Patrick Waugh got him into the playoffs. Good for him for getting
Mhm.
back into the league and getting his team to the postseason when things looked shaky under Lane Lambert. But
Yep.
it looks to me just like it's gonna be formality right now because Carolina doesn't make too many mistakes as a team. I don't see them letting New York escape again 2 games in a row. I really don't.
I'd be genuinely shocked if that's the case because considering how stacked the Islanders have been, and the fact that they squeaked into the playoffs like within the last weekend of the regular season, like the Islanders are no team to slouch at. But of course, Carolina, like you said, too many deep weapons, man. I mean, Svechnikov, um, who else is there? Jordan Fost, the reemergent, I guess the renaissance of Jordan Stahl as a leader in the locker room. Um, Seth Jarvis as well, like a player that Toronto should have actually picked up during the draft, but instead basically fucked themselves over. Frederick Anderson basically being the goaltender that we needed him to be. Of course, Carolina overpaying him a little bit, but you know what? Like he's well deserving of at this point now. Like I don't see Carolina losing this series in less than say 6 games, but if the Islanders can find a way to claw back in this series, because we both know that game 5 goes down on Tuesday. And Tuesday is essentially like D-Day for a number of teams. The Islanders included, the Jets included, who we're going to talk about a little bit in a little bit. Nashville as well, and then of course the team that we're currently standing right now, which is the Toronto Make Me Laughs. I mean the Toronto Maple Leafs. Uh, it's D-Day for a number of these teams, and obviously there's going to be a heavier discussion in regards to the Leafs, like I said later on in the show. Um, I don't know where the Islanders go from here if they bite the bullet and fail to at least make the series interesting.
You know what I felt this series was going to go the way of Carolina when the Islanders you had this Carolina team against the wall in game 2. You had them down 3-1 and you couldn't hang on. That to me is the sign of a team that isn't ready to take that next step. If you can't blow the team out like that and
Mm-hmm.
give them, you got to make sure they're dead. The Islanders didn't in game 2. Carolina took advantage, and that should be right there. The Islanders threw all they had. It wasn't enough. They couldn't withstand the storm, and they
Mm-hmm.
lost. When you lose
No
those
pun
kind of
intended.
games, yeah. When you lose those kind of games, you're not ready to move on. You're not.
Nope, not in the slightest. I mean the Jets are currently buried under a lot of snow right now after the Avalanches have essentially taken them out. Uh, could we see the end of Connor Hellebuck in a Jets jersey at this point, as the Avalanche are currently up 3-1 in that series?
I he's still getting paid a lot of money to be that top guy in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
I think he wants to stay there, but
Mm-hmm.
man, if you're Winnipeg, you're gonna have to answer some questions because I know you're playing an Avalanche team that's very scary. I mean, any team with Kale McCarr is gonna be scary. Any team with Kale McCarr and Nate McKinnon's gonna be a scary bunch. But
Exactly.
when
Or Nichushkin as well.
Yeah, but when you finish that high, when you finish a season that strong, when you finish a year that strong, and all season on most of the season you pummeled Colorado, and they knock you out,
Mm-hmm.
there's gonna be some question marks. I think in Winnipeg, there's gonna be some questions in the offseason if they can't get out of the first round.
Here's the other thing too, right? I mean, True North had to deal with the fact that they were losing a lot of money because of the fact that people weren't able to actually buy tickets to games. And it's like now that now that the support is there, now that the whiteout is there once again, it feels like the team hasn't really responded to the fact that, like, hey, it's the playoffs. Like, you guys got to find a way to step it right the fuck up. I
Yeah.
also blame Jesse Pollock for his nonsense though, because it's like for him to basically put the cart before the horse in this situation. My man is basically like has effectively just buried the Jets in a lot of snow. No pun intended with the team's names. Like the Jets have been essentially buried in an avalanche of goals and hits and just mistakes. And now Winnipeg is essentially one game away from potentially blowing up this team. Like, this team is a good team, but it's not looking good for Winnipeg right now.
No, not right now. They gotta find a way to dig themselves out of it. And again, and also too, they lost Brendan Dillon in that post game scrum to a very, very nasty cut to the back of his hand. I saw the camera angle that showed a close up of it, and it did not look good. I haven't seen any updates since that incident, but it's always that's the one thing I always fear, Dave, seeing those kind of scrums. A guy falls down and a guy gets stepped on, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, Brent Dillon's hand appeared. And appeared it got stepped on. So we got to see what the word is on him because it was a very nasty gash on his arm on his hand.
It really was. I also got to ask: will the real Tyler Toffoli please stand up and actually take this series over? Because the type of player that he is, and considering how well he was playing in Montreal, what's happened to him? Like, I barely seen him in this. I've barely seen him in this series at all.
Hmm. Yeah, no, he's been quiet so far for Winnipeg in the series, and even though yes, he was a great addition at the deadline for the Jets, they're gonna need a little bit more from him to stay alive, Dave.
Same with Nino Niederreiter, because like I haven't seen much of him in this series either. I mean, he did end up getting himself two helpers the other day, but other than that, that's pretty much it.
Hmm.
So again, like, I mean, if Winnipeg can actually bury themselves out from the snow and start flying again, and be able to make a series out of this, then like until that happens, like, I mean, Winnipeg is basically on the brink of like just staying grounded for the entire series, or staying grounded for the rest of the year.
Yeah,
So
and it's tough because that's a team that I enjoy watching. So I would love to see them again find a way to go deep. I remember 2018 when they went to the conference finals.
that was
That
a
was
lot of
a
fun.
Yeah, that was a very fun team to follow and see how far they went in the Western Conference.
Mm-hmm. So we're gonna keep an eye on that one. We mentioned, as we were talking about this earlier, the Canucks had managed to get themselves into a 3-1 stranglehold on the Nashville Predators, and it's looking like Vancouver's being the team of destiny right now, as they're just one win away from going back to the Western Conference semis and awaiting the winner of Edmonton LA. This is despite the fact that Brock Besser and Thatcher Demko are both out with injuries, and yet still Vancouver's still finding a way to get back, to just fight back and stay alive. Like, I'm completely speechless. But then again, Vancouver has always had the tools and the firepower to just at least get themselves through a great series and basically steamroll whoever was in their way, at least within the first round.
You mentioned actually, Besser actually today. He actually played. He played today at a hat trick in game four. So yeah, Vancouver, you lose Thatcher Demko, you lose Casey Smith in net. Your
Yep.
your best your options in there are down. You're down to Arthur Slivwa as your
Mm-hmm.
starting goaltender, and you battled back. Yeah, you battled back from being down the road to get a massive game 4 win. And now Vancouver is up 3-1. Now, granted, Vancouver won the Pacific Division. It's,
Mm-hmm.
again, they should escape the first round, but it's been a lot harder than you thought it would have gone for them, Dave, so far. It's been a lot more challenging.
Very much so. Ideally, I would like to see Vancouver at least make a cup final and finally get the monkey off their back and actually win one for a change. Because it's like it's been 3 tries and 3 straight losses in the cup final.
Yep. 82, 94, 2011. All held L's at the end of it.
Exactly, because like what the Islanders beat Vancouver in '82, and they swept through them.
Yep.
Uh, the Rangers broke a 54-year curse on the Canucks in 7, and then Boston, of course, basically just manhandled them in Game 7 with Tim Thomas being the absolute shithead that he is between the. But like Vancouver has had a chance to actually do so well, especially with the goaltending that they had with like say back in 2011 they had Roberto Luongo. In '94 they had McLean. What was his name?
Yes, Kurt McLean.
Kirk McLean. Yes. Of course we were too young. We weren't even thought of during the '82 series, right? But like still like the fact that you're a Canadian. Those ugly V jerseys, by the way, are from 1982. Those things give me nightmares.
What? Those are great. You mean
Oh man, I like
I
the
love
94
those
ones better.
jerseys.
The '94 ones were actually better looking.
Hey, 82 ones, they were unique. They had some passion. They had some flair.
True. Unlike the Leafs did back on Saturday.
You weren't feeling no passion that night. There wasn't much passion in the building in
There was a lot
Scotiabank.
of tequila being poured in that building. I will tell you that straight. There was a lot of alcohol and there was a lot of tailor-made. There was a lot of polyester within the 100 level. And I will tell you straight right now, like as a Leaf fan, that hurt my soul a lot. And after seeing all of that, you kind of sit and wonder, like, oh boy, okay, I'm actually not going to discuss that just yet because like that's already like a trigger point in itself. So I'm gonna take a step back on that one. Of course, I'm gonna let you discuss the Edmonton series for a little bit while I try and calm down.
Yes, in Edmonton, LA. Time of this taping, we're getting ready for Edmonton, LA. The late game, the late game kicking off 10:50 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:50 p.m. Edmonton leads that series 2-1. The Oilers got a massive win on the road against LA, a 5-1 victory. You got goals from Draisaitl and McDavid. You got great play from Vander Kane. This is a team in which we've seen how much LA has been that rival for Edmonton the past 3 years in a row. But defensively, for LA, they keep trying to slow this game down, and they failed to really slow it down too much. You only got the game 2 win in Edmonton. But for LA, defensively, they have failed for the most part to really control the game and play a slower paced game. Edmonton, guys like Hyman, McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl, they are finding ways to keep the tempo high, and the Kings can't handle that, Dave.
No, they can't. I mean, you have Anze Kopitar, you have Quentin Byfield, two strong goal scorers within the Kings organization right now, and they're effectively being rendered useless by Edmonton's defense and by Edmonton's defensive play. Like Edmonton's just cycling through these guys like just like it's like a hot knife through butter. I don't I don't believe the Kings may have the strength to survive this series. I could be wrong. Like I mean, say when this episode drops, we could be seeing a 2-2 split after the Kings uh potentially win game 4 tonight. Um so many different factors that could be at play. Connor McDavid could hit a hat trick, hit another playoff hat trick. Um, say Leon Draisaitl explodes for a few goals. Evander Kane finally sheds his gambling moniker and becomes the goal scorer, like the perennial goal scorer that Edmonton has needed him to be. There are a number of other variables that could step up too. I mean, Jack Campbell officially got called back up to the Edmonton Oilers earlier today after the Bakersfield Condor season was done. So many factors at play right with LA and with obviously with LA and Edmonton right now. I ideally I would like to see David Rittich actually find a way to get like stand on his head and get Edmonton back into the series. I want to see this to go 7, but again, like Edmonton has a little too much firepower for maybe LA to handle in the situation. And as Avery has disappeared a little bit, like I would like to
Oh
say that.
no, there we go.
Okay.
You see, the
Yeah.
one guy who's been a major factor for LA in all 3 years, no matter what, has been Adrian Kempe. That's
Yeah.
fine. He's been like the one consistent guy in all 3 years. He's been the biggest cog for LA. He's got 4 points in 3 games for the LA Kings. And again, and actually Kopitar had to go to overtime winner in game 2. So really, the three guys who offensively have been doing their best, you mentioned, have been Byfield, Kopitar, and Kempe. Those are three guys who are finding ways to keep the Kings in this. But
Mhm.
Edmonton, but that's when the pace slows down. When the pace keeps going up to what Edmonton wants, especially when Edmonton on the power play, it feels like it's an automatic goal for Edmonton.
Mhm.
LA's penalty kill, which is one of the better ones in the league, just has been getting shredded all series long.
Like you're seeing Drew Doughty basically get run down get run down by a much younger and much more talented offense in Edmonton right now. And like I feel like Drew might be past his prime at this point. Like I commend him for sticking around in this series for so long, but like essentially after a certain point, it's like you kind of have to ride into the sunset at this point. Like, is this pretty much the end for him? If say the Kings end up losing the series.
I don't know if any King fans listening like that very much, Dave.
No, I know, but like it's not an ideal situation to think about, but it is something to think about though. Would you not agree?
I think Doughty's gonna be an eternal king. I think the bigger question is gonna be, I really think it's more in the front office because I don't see Luke Robitaille, and this is just me personally. Like I don't know if Luke Robitaille is gonna put up with another year of out in the first round, out to the exact same team. So I could possibly see a change of GM going to next year.
Well, who would you see? Who would you like to see in the general manager role in LA?
Honestly, and this should be for LA, this should be for Edmonton. Like I don't know how you're not looking at Eric Tulski. Like that's got to be your next move. And again, that's a big if the Kings did move on from Rob Blake, but you got to go and get Eric Tulski if you're considering a move to bring a new GM. Like that's got to be your guy.
Mhm. Well, let's see how this plays out. Of course, game four going down Sunday night. Obviously, by the time of this recording, we'll update you and we'll let you know whether, well, you'll obviously see whether or not Edmonton is taking a 3-1 series lead or if, say, there is going to be at least a game six in this series. The other series that we're keeping an eye on as well, and in fact, like while we're recording this, I'm watching this right now. Washington trying to stave off elimination against the New York Rangers. And I'm talking about the President's Trophy New York Rangers, President's Trophy winning New York Rangers. Like the Rangers have effectively played an extremely physical and extremely destructive game against Washington throughout the first 3 games of the series. Matt Rempe actually opened the scoring for New York. That had me losing my mind a little bit. Of course, that's been the catalyst for the Rangers to actually take a 3-0 stranglehold in the series. And of course, with Mika Zibanejad, Artemi Panarin, and of course Alexis Lafreniere emerging as stars in this series, and effectively locking down Ovechkin, T.J. Wilson, and the rest of the Capitals. Like, do you think it's too little, too late for Washington to try and at least find a way to make a comeback?
I think it's right now when Washington's gonna try and put a fight. You mean Tom Wilson? I don't know who's today. TJ Wilson is Tom Wilson.
Or Tom Wilson, sorry, excuse
Tom
me.
Wilson.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think yeah, no, I know Winnipeg. I know right now Winnipeg. Washington has this game tied up at 2-2 at home. But right now, again, you're right. I think it is too little, too late. And Washington was one of those teams that was battling in that Eastern Conference playoff race to get in. The goal differential is one of the worst ones of any playoff team in the past 35 years. And
Yeah.
right now, it's just Washington looks like a team that's just they're aging out. They were a great team. This was 5 years ago. This is a much more competitive series, but there's
Yeah.
just too much weapons on New York side that can easily contain Ovechkin and contain the rest when Ovi isn't out there on the ice.
Exactly. Igor Shosturkin. I can't pronounce his damn name. Igor Shosturkin. Or wow, it's like saying statistics very very quickly and not messing up his name. Basically, Igor S. I'll call him Igor S. at this point. Igor has basically been playing lights out in this series, and of course with the resurgence of Jonathan Quick, um, New York has a very strong goaltender tandem between the two of them this year. Between the two this year, like don't see, I don't potentially see Washington trying to come up, trying to at least get one game out of this series. If they do, it'll be very interesting to see. But you might effectively be seeing the end of like Ovechkin as he hits his twilight, in the NHL.
He's he's not retiring before the record breaks, though. He's not retiring before he gets 895. He's gonna he'll stick around and get to that record. He can. I know he's 36 right now. You give him 3 more years, he'll get there.
That's if his body can handle another 3 more years. So that's the thing, right?
I mean, he's never been injured. Like he's never really had a major injury, unlike Stamkos or Crosby. Like he's relatively been pretty healthy his entire career.
Yeah. Ideally, though, I mean, yes, everybody wants Ovechkin to break Gretzky's record, but again, time waits for no man, regardless of who you think you are. And ideally speaking, if I'm Ovechkin, like I would much rather try and break that record sooner rather than later. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. The reason why I said 3 is because you mentioned time. The one thing that it appears that Ovechkin isn't the 55, 60 goal guy anymore. That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing you're seeing where you're seeing the goal total starting to slow down. So that's why I say 2 or 3 more years, because he may not have a 40 goal year next year. It might be next year afterwards. It might be 2 years of 30 to get to that mark.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd still stay somewhat excited to and just a little more invested as to whether or not Ovechkin can finally catch Wayne Gretzky's record, but it all depends on whether or not his health wants to keep him going. So we're going to keep an eye on that series as well. Uh who had Tampa Bay actually getting slapped by Florida on their bingo card this year?
I had that one going a distance. I did not have that series being Florida just running over the Lightning. That to me is a little bit surprising.
Like Florida is scary right now. Absolutely scary. Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart, Brady Kachuk, or sorry, not Brady Kachuk. Excuse me.
Matt Kachuk.
Yeah, Matthew Kachuk. Sergei Bobrovsky standing on his head. Nick Cousins being a fucking rat and still being that prominent goal scorer that fucking Florida has right now. It's scary to see. It's scary to see this team actually do something. Considering the amount of firepower that Florida has with Omar Ekman Larson and Carter Verhaeghe, like just lighting up the lamp like it's nobody's business, and yet being effectively taken out by Steven Stamkos yesterday. Brandon Hagel, of course, getting 2 goals, and then Steve Stamkos getting 2 goals himself. Nick Paul basically putting the icing on the cake in the third period. And Braden Point still emerging as a prominent player within Tampa Bay system. Um, I didn't expect this. I didn't expect to see this. I mean, this is ideally the same type of fight we wanted to see with the Leafs recently, and Tampa Bay still proving that, like, even though, like, yeah, you're up 3-0. You may be up 3-0 on us right now, but like, fuck up just one time, and we'll literally give you a swift uppercut. And that's exactly what happened Saturday. That is
Yeah,
exactly what happened Saturday. And like, Andre Vasilevsky might be the determinant factor as to whether or not Florida is going to remain the little brother in the state of Florida when it comes to hockey.
but though I do like seeing both Florida teams being very competitive. I think it's better when both of these markets have really solid teams. I think it's great to see, because the Battle of Florida is turning into a solid matchup in the postseason.
Yeah. What is it, like the second or the third time that these two teams have faced off against each other?
Yeah, the third year we've had these two.
Yeah. So I mean, again, if this can go the way of like, well, not Montreal, Toronto, but like say maybe Boston, Montreal level. Um, I could see this working out very well. If it does end up going seven and Florida ends up blowing a 3-0 lead, I'd be pretty happy about it.
You
Again,
know, I doubt it though, but that'll be interesting.
that's just me though. Like I like seeing chaos in the NHL where like
Oh, I know you do.
it's like essentially like I would like to see at least all 8 series go 7 games at least. Like who's going through and who's going home, who's going to have a heart attack and who's going to be cheering to the point where they don't go to work the next morning. That is essentially what I would like to see in the playoffs. But obviously, we're not going to get that because why? Capitalism is a bitch. So, oh man. Say if things work out the way that no Leafs fan wants to, I think there is going to be a heavy discussion about that come next episode. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, we're gonna shift gears for just a second. We're gonna go back to the the Stanley Cup playoffs situation with our favorite hockey team later on at the end of the show. Right now, we're going to dive into the Utah situation. Avery, I'm gonna let you discuss this one because I feel that you have your ears to the ground in regards to the NHL and Utah a little bit more than I do.
So this past week here, former Arizona Coyote players who are now NHL Utah players went to the Delta Center in Salt Lake City for an event, a meet and greet event to meet the fans for the first time, get to see Salt Lake. They've been flown in. They were flown in by new owner Ryan Smith and Ashley Smith to see the city, and it was an event that really gave the fans the first chance to get to know the team, see what they're about. And full credit, I'll give the Smith family credit. It looks like they truly want to do right by these players, by the staff, by the organization. For those who are going to be making the trip over from Arizona to Utah, and it appears everything has been said in the media. Ryan Smith has done media hits over the past week, and from what he said, from what he's done, it sounds like he truly does believe in investing in his team and making sure that they are competitive, making sure they're comfortable in Salt Lake City, which is a really good sign compared to how things were with Alex Morello.
Here's the one thing that's going to burn a hole in my chest in regards to Arizona. Like, why did it take this long for, say, essentially the state of Arizona to, why did it take this long for them to actually find a way to, like, invest in a hockey team? Because, yes, we all know the Phoenix situation didn't work out, and then they had to move to Glendale, and then Glendale was a nightmare in itself, and then they had to play at a college arena at Arizona State, and now that they're being kicked out and sent over to Utah when they could have waited until June for that land auction to actually go through, like if you're an Arizona or if you're a Coyotes fan or a former Coyotes fan, and you're looking at this situation like, what the hell, right? We had a chance to actually cultivate, say, a strong hockey market within the Southwest Desert, and now that that's being taken away and being sent to a place where like you can't have beer on certain days, and you also have you're in a state that essentially believes in polygamy. Um, it's kind of fucked up to see to essentially see, say, the fruits of your labor go elsewhere, and then next thing you know, say they run into the same situation Colorado did back in 1996 when they left Quebec City and essentially won the Stanley Cup in Colorado. Now, like that in itself seems like immediate disrespect to me, and I would literally tell the NHL to go fuck itself right after, because St. Louis did the same thing when the Rams won the Super Bowl and they left Los Angeles, or no, they left St. Louis, and it's like it feels like a violent slap in the face. The same thing happened with the Seattle Supersonics, and when they went to Oklahoma City and became the Oklahoma City Thunder, Seattle basically said, "Listen, you can go." They told the NBA, "Listen, you can go fuck yourself at this point because we don't want to deal with you anymore." And now, of course, all of a sudden, the NBA wants to backtrack and say, "Hey, Seattle might be an expansion city." Like, do your due diligence at this point. But like, if I'm an Arizona hockey fan, like I'd feel burned by this whole situation.
Well, so as we know, has come out. Morello is going to retain, and this was mentioned. I mentioned with Troy when we had our show how Morello is going to maintain the trademark and everything, the IP and history of Arizona for a second team, if he gets it. Which now the hockey culture in Arizona, it is great, and there are groups of alumni and hockey players from men's women's hockey who are working to make sure that hockey culture in Arizona is still there for the time being. At that people still care about hockey. I like the fact that there's going to be plans to make sure hockey is still ingrained in the community in Phoenix and in Arizona. But
Mhm.
with Alex Morello, my frustration with it is that I think what it appears, Dave, is NHL rule it just be so unattainable with Morello that they couldn't wait any longer for the land auction because you got a man who is just so wildly. First of all, the fact that the league gave him a team period is embarrassing. This man has shown for the course of 5 years he should have never been given this franchise in the first place for his business practices, his conduct, how things went. He should have
Mhm.
never been the guy. He should never been that kind of person. So I will give the league credit to an extent. It does sound like it was at a point in which we can't give this guy more chances because what if it fails again? And Ryan Smith was someone who has a lot of money, has shown before he can have stability as a sports owner owning the Utah Jazz. Him and Ashley Smith, his wife, that family shown before they can have a stable sports ownership empire. So
Mhm.
as much as yes, it does suck to lose Arizona hockey. As much as I did believe and I will still believe that Arizona can be a successful NHL market. You've got the Smith family in Salt Lake City with a track record of running teams right in that
Mhm.
aspect. It's better to let them handle things than prolong this out with an owner who wasn't paying his hotel bills on the road.
That's nuts. That's absolutely nuts.
Like I told Troy, I was saying with Troy, Dave, how hotels in NHL were telling the Coyotes, no, you got to present us a valid check upon check-in. A pro sports team was told, and not just a pro sports team, because we see this kind of stuff happen. We've seen, money issues with teams before in minor leagues. A team of the Big Four in 2024 was told by hotels, pay us right now.
That, that's crazy. You know what? On second thought, it's like whoever gets control of, like, say, this new Arizona franchise that comes through, they have to make sure that this man does not get his hands on any way, shape, or form of it come come decision making time. Now, of course, ideally, like, he still, like, considering he still owns the trademark of the Arizona Coyotes, like, unfortunately that's not going to happen anytime soon. But like, if I'm an investor in, say, the state of Arizona and like the status of Arizona hockey, and there's an opportunity for an NHL franchise to come back to the state of Arizona, like, would you not want to find a way to pry that from his hands and do right by the citizens of, like, by the citizens of and the community of Arizona hockey in the first place?
Oh, of course. I definitely first of all, I don't think he's gonna be the guy. I think someone or some people within those 5 years within that 5 year window he has to bring the team back. I think within that 5 year window, someone is gonna find a way to get the rights away from Morello, some way, somehow.
Mhm. I mean, is that same energy being established with that group in Atlanta, because the Atlanta Thrasher jerseys were actually pretty fire.
Atlanta is it. Atlanta feels like you know what, Dave? I'm not opposed to it. I mean, I want to see Atlanta come back because my thing is, if you can make Atlanta thrive, be black, be the team for black people in the South. Dive right in and embrace your black community. Like, that's the one thing I hate about how we're seeing the renderings for this team being in the suburbs and being in the white affluent areas.
Yeah.
Now, if you're gonna do that, then find a way to get those in Atlanta. You gotta figure out transportation. You gotta figure out public transit. Then you gotta figure out
Yeah.
a way to get these people down, because I think it'll be a big mistake for Atlanta if they don't tap into saying, "Yeah, we're Atlanta and we're blackity black." Like, MLS, Atlanta United, David, MLS, they have tapped in and said we are the team for the blackest people in the city, and it's been a success for them.
Like, who's even running that group? It's Anson Carter, at least, right?
Yes, he's involved. He's involved with the group. There are two different groups. He's involved in the more prominent group that's trying to bring a team to Atlanta.
But
He's
like,
been
you
the most.
gotta find more black investors to actually do that, right? Not just your basic bougie black people. I mean, like, you gotta find community. You gotta find people within the Atlanta proper community, and then the
Mhm.
suburbs of Atlanta as well, to actually be able to say, you know what, like, listen, if African Americans want to actually be able, sorry, if African American boys want to play hockey their own way, they've
Well,
got to
boys and girls.
make it work, right? Like, obviously, we know hockey is a very racist sport, and that's not sugarcoating it. That's just being blunt as it is. Or sorry, that's just being upfront as it is as possible. Hockey is a very racist sport right now. We have to find a way to, like, say, shatter that barrier and be like, you know what, like, listen, if we're gonna have a predominantly black hockey team in the state of Georgia, where, say, a good percentage, if not a high percentage of its constituents happen to be African American, you've got to find a way to make that work.
Mhm. Yeah, you have to find. Yeah, I understand. Understand that there are hockey people who live in the communities that they're looking at building rinks in for the ownership bids in Atlanta,
Yeah.
but to ignore the fact that Atlanta, like, to ignore the fact that, yeah, it's predominantly black city, and you have to find a way to tap into that and say, hey, we want you coming to games, because look at the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves moved out of Turner Field and now play in Cobb County, which is one of the more, it's a heavily white area of Georgia, which to
Mhm.
me, that's a clear indication of what you're trying to do. And we've said before on the show, look at the Washington Capitals, how their Virginia thing ended up falling apart. Moving to
Mhm.
Northern Virginia was moving away from your base, moving away from an area that was very diverse and very a true reflection of what the DC area is. Moving to Northern Virginia didn't reflect that. So you want this team to survive in Atlanta and thrive, you gotta tap in from day one and say, hey, the Atlanta area is very diverse, but also too, the most amount of black millionaires in America live in Atlanta. You're right, Dave. You should be getting your black investor. You should be getting black wealth involved in whatever this new Atlanta team is going to be called, because there are so many rich black people who live in Georgia.
I mean, could they be conservative rich black people? Probably. That kind of hurts my soul saying that in the first place, but you take what you can get in this situation. If they're more democratically inclined, like they're, say, a little more progressive, then of course, like, I would like to see a little bit more diversity when it comes to the ownership group, right? Ideally, that's in an ideal world. Ideally, you want to be able to have that within, like, say, within the hockey world in itself. But, like, the only way things will work in this situation is if, like, say, yeah, you got to play ball for a little bit, but then you also have to find a way to, like, say, shatter those preconceived notions within the hockey world right now. I don't know. What do
You know what? I honestly, I have no idea. I have no idea what the politics are. Those black millionaires, I don't know, but like we'll see. Like we'll see what happens. Again, first of all, we need an arena built. We need that first of all before we really get anywhere. Because you can't just play. You can't just play in an empty pit. We need that. We need a building built first in suburban Atlanta in the areas that they say they're going to try and build. But it'll be interesting to see how this goes about. And you know what? Don't be wrong. I do like the fact Antikar is involved. I do like the fact that he is a prominent blackface in hockey, leading the charge to bring a team back. I think that's a great thing to see. But we'll see what happens around. We'll see what happens with the rest of it because there's a chance to really get this right.
you
And the way the hockey world sees Sunbelt markets and just the ignorance towards certain places where hockey goes, you can't afford to have this not done right the third time around, sorry, in Atlanta. You can't
of
afford
course,
that.
of course you can. And ideally, right now, with like the state of Florida being the totality a nightmare that it's playing out to be, and like a lot of like say businesses and investors, regardless of the fact that you're a Republican, you're a Republican ass bag, a lot of them wanting to like actually leave the state because it's like you're losing shit because your governor wants to be a racist crybaby. Like it comes to a point where you want to avoid that as much as possible, especially with your ownership groups. And essentially, like even though you still feel that you can make your money and have the same ideology as the other 33 or potentially 34 investment groups within the National Hockey League, like after a certain point, it's like, okay, like there are certain states you want to do business in, and there are certain states you don't want to do business in. And obviously, that fine line is going to have to be worked around within the state of Georgia, as they're like literally right next door to Florida, as it is. And
Mm.
not only are you invading also, say, Tennessee's market, but you're also invading Florida's market and you're invading North Carolina's market, as there's not essentially a team within that particular area, right? Because like you have to deal with the states of Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, just to name a few. And then of course, like you have the state of Tennessee, Florida, and North Carolina, all currently holding some form of sports franchise within those states, right?
I wouldn't say you're invading the markets. If you're trying to put a second team in Tennessee or another team in Florida, I get it. But Atlanta is really invading anything in terms of the South. You're not gonna get those. I mean, from the states that don't have pro sports teams, sure you can try to get those ones over. But I don't really see anything that would be an invasion or a threat to say Tennessee or Florida. So.
What would you say for like North Carolina or for the Carolinas though? Like would
Oh
that?
no, no, no. That's Hurricanes country, so that I don't see anybody jumping over. For the most part, or that Hurricanes have that market. That is firmly, in large part, Hurricanes territory, and they've done a really good job of making sure that state, North Carolina, is Hurricanes territory. So I don't see them seeing as a threat in any way. If we were to get a third Atlanta franchise.
Mhm. Ideally, like there have been a number of discussions about the Utah name. Like, what would you like to see as Utah's NHL name?
Honestly, if the Golden Knights weren't a thing, I would have said the Salt Lake. I would have said the Utah Golden Eagles, which is an homage to their old IHL team, the Salt Lake Golden Eagles,
Mhm.
which were the farm team for the California Golden Seals, the Flames back in the day. But I don't see that going over two teams with the for with I'll see a league going down to have two teams that have golden blank as a name.
Yeah,
So from what I've seen, honestly, none of the names really jump out at me as I see Fury, Blizzard, Yetis. They all really scream to me roller hockey team from 25 years ago. These names, honestly,
yeah.
honestly, like the one name that I think rather right now, I for this year at least, I would say just embrace being HC Utah like an over like a European club just for the 1 year. get your colors right, get your scheme right, get your word mark right, and just go with Utah HC for the first year. Even though I don't like that, out of the gate, but the other names that have come out just scream to me roller hockey league that went bankrupt in the mid 90s.
True. I mean, the Utah Blizzard might be a little bit problematic, especially considering that Colorado also happens to be in the like also happens.
Yeah, it's similar.
So I mean, that should be thrown out the window immediately. I feel like if you really want to embrace something, um, hey, the Utah Huskies does sound like a great idea.
But where's the connection though? Where's the connection to Huskies?
Well, here's the thing, right? Like, I mean, if you have if you have wolves within like say if you have wolves within like say the actual state of Utah, right? And like of course the wolf is an actual predator within the state itself. And they are known to be within the forests and the mountain ranges of the state of Utah. Like would you not find a way to make that work?
Um, I could that seems to me more like a Colorado Minnesota name than a name for Utah. Like I really think a bird name would have worked better, but I mean it's not the worst. I mean it's certainly better than Fury. It's better than Blizzards, but
Mm-hmm.
I really think you have to gonna workshop this name a little bit more because the 8 names that have come out, none of them wow me. I know they're gonna do their bracket to determine their name,
Yeah.
but none of these names really stand out to me like, wow, that's different, that's unique. Like the last name I really thought was actually different was with the Kraken with Seattle, because again, there's no Kraken team. It was actually original name to the sports world in general. So like
Yeah.
you gotta be a little bit different, I think.
No, I fully agree with that. I mean, you can't really call them the Utah Mormons because it's like that's just messed up. Well, I mean, the Utah Outlaws doesn't really sound that bad, right? Because like obviously could be a tie into like the whole Midwestern phase, and of course as well the Klondike Rush within the 1890s, right? Like
Yeah,
the Rockies were known for a little bit of panhandling back in the. Actually, how's this? The Utah Panhandlers,
Utah Pat. I probably think it'd probably be changed like gold panners, but I think you could possibly play into that. I think there's a possibility.
or like the Utah Gold Rush.
Interesting.
Very interesting name. Or the Utah Klondike.
Talk like
No. I'm not saying that as like say as a derogatory thing. Like the Utah,
no, but
like I mean that does stick out, does it not?
yeah, no, that is different.
It's extremely different. Because like if you want to call them the Klondike, right? Then like like you could literally have a little bit like you can have like say not your regular yellow gold, but like you can have like more of say like a shinier gold. You can have like a white. You can also have say like more like a glacier blue, and like
Hmm.
maybe like say a gray.
Yeah.
You know, have that work to potentially work out. You never know, right? Like you could also have like say like it's a little bit of like say derivative from the Denver Nuggets, but with the Rockies and everything, you could still make that work.
Yeah, we'll see. You mentioned the colors. I know people have tried to look at the hoodies that the players wore and the word markings, but I'll
Mhm.
say as much. Con Temporary logo word marks and temporary word mark colors
Mhm.
they're almost never the final color. So don't read too much into that. I know they have like a light blue or like a black. Like don't read too much into that. Those
Yeah,
are just placeholder colors. I know the Kraken when they were first announced, like their placeholder word mark had them in red and white,
yeah.
and the actual colors were not red and white. They were teal and white and blue. So don't read too much into those colors they have for like the placeholder word mark. Don't.
Okay, objectively speaking, Seattle like vehemently missed a chance to go with the emerald green in their uniform.
There could still be. You never know. They could still tie it in for an updated jersey or a new alternate. You never know.
We'll see. I mean, I still feel like it's a missed opportunity, like us with using Black Ice as the name of our podcast. But obviously, we we definitively decided against that work during the planning stage. So, oh man, good times. All right, we're gonna switch over to the PWHL right now.
Mhm.
It stands Montreal has leapfrogged Toronto for first overall in the PWHL standings, as Montreal is now sitting on 41 points, as Toronto currently has 38 points going into going into the last few weeks of the season. Boston has a took a huge win over Minnesota this past weekend, and Ottawa now, of course, trying to hold serve by maintaining that last playoff spot. Ideally, right now, do you see Boston actually catching Ottawa for that last playoff spot, or is it just basically curtains for it's basically curtains for Boston?
Oh no, they're right there. They're right there. They're only a point. They're only one win back in regulation back of Ottawa, so they are right there. Hannah Brandt got the game winner against Minnesota, a buzzer beater goal that Boston desperately needed. So the Ottawa and Boston, that is not done by any means at all. I mean, Boston's gonna need again another win to secure this. So we're gonna get a really dramatic end of the season here because
Mhm.
Boston has to find a way to win out their last game of the year. Ottawa still has two more games to play, so Ottawa really dictates things right now, having two games in hand as opposed to Boston. But I'm loving the fact that we're coming down to the last two games of the season, and we got a dogfight when it comes to who's going to get that number 4 seed in the P Dub, Dave.
Mhm. I alternatively say on the top side of things, Montreal and Toronto were essentially establishing a new chapter of a rivalry between the two cities. And
Mm.
ideally, as say like as a Torontonian, um, seeing Montreal beat the living shit out of you for, or no, beat the shit out of your ideas and your dreams of being a first place team, only to have that snatched away from you from our French counterpart.
And
That
actually, not
that creates a little bit of a, like, say, a resentful situation, especially especially if you're like, say, if you've been in, like, say, immersed in the Toronto Montreal rivalry.
And actually, Jay, we'll do a jump in. Actually, at the time of taping, Toronto was knocked off New York 6-2. Big win for PWHL Toronto. Sarah
Mhm.
Sarah Nurse had a hat trick. Sarah Nurse hat trick. 10 goals in the year for her.
His very first hat trick in BWHL history.
Yes, big game for Sarah Nurse as Toronto jumps back on top of the PWHL standings
Oh
by
wow,
virtue of wins. So Toronto Montreal are tied in points of 41 points, but Toronto sits on top with 11 regulation wins.
wow, that's insane. You know what? I can't wait to see these two teams tear it up. Um, Essentially, if I'm Toronto and I overtake Montreal and I hold on to the top of the standings for good, I'd want to eliminate Montreal early if I'm allowed to pick my opponent. No, I'm not kidding. Like, I mean, if I'm given the opportunity to pick my opponent in the first round, I would try and find a way to eliminate, like, my competition extremely early.
actually, no. So they can't. So it gotta be either the third or fourth place team, Dave. So they can't pick
Really?
Montreal. Yeah, it's
That's
go to fourth place.
Well, then
So
either take out Ottawa or Boston, whoever gets that last spot,
eh,
because we all know New York has effectively been eliminated,
yeah,
and
and Minnesota's in third. So they could pick Minnesota as well too. So they could pick Minnesota. They could pick. Oh yeah. So I actually, yeah. So it's gonna be so the way it's all jammed up, it's most likely going to be third or fourth, either Ottawa or Minnesota or Boston. So you're looking at, I highly doubt it's going to be Montreal. So yeah, so the
Mhm.
first round opponent for Toronto is going to be either one of those three, Minnesota, Ottawa, or Boston. So, but I mean, I understand though, Dave. It would have been high drama if Toronto did go in to that and pick Montreal as a first round opponent if they were allowed to.
Exactly. And you know what? Like, just the whole chaotic energy behind that would have been a lot more fun, but that's kind of not how things work in these situations. So it is what it is. Okay, now we're going to go to the main event of what we're talking about, what we wanted to talk about this evening.
Let's get ready to rumble.
And that is the Toronto Maple Leafs and the proverbial bed shitting that they did back on Saturday night. Now, of course, the group chat has been in total unanimous, total unanimous decision that the Leafs are essentially going to implode on themselves in the most massive way possible. And they're going to potentially either lose game five. Of course, game five going down on Tuesday. This episode will more than likely be dropped before, or no, more than likely dropped after game five. After game five, if we're lucky, maybe it'll get dropped on the day of game five. But ideally, Toronto is in a very, very deep hole. A significantly deep hole. One from which they might never be able to get out of. And like the tombstones are actually being carved out right now for not only say this team but also the front office. And I saw it on social media this like say within the last maybe 24 hours. The Toronto Maple Leafs franchise right now is essentially on its deathbed, at least with this iteration of the team. And I'm I don't know what to say. Like Mitch Marner might have played his last game as a Maple Leaf if he decides to move his waive his no movement clause. Shanahan might essentially be fired. Same with Sheldon Keefe come game five if they don't come home with a win. With Riley's comments, Riley may have to pack his bags. Um, Bertuzzi apparently needs to be shot out of a cannon. Um, our goaltenders are essentially basically junior goaltenders posing as NHL goaltenders, or not even junior goaltenders, AHL goaltenders posing as NHL goaltenders. It's bad in Leaf Nation. Like fans are upset, employees are upset. The media is just like, what the hell's going on here? Because Game Four felt like a funeral in the building, and it's sad. It's virtually sad to see that. A storied franchise of nearly 110 years, and only 13 Stanley Cups to show for it. At this rate, what do you do? Like Avery, I know you've been around hockey for a very long time, and like
Mhm.
you've seen at least one Cup final with the
Yes.
Edmonton Oilers. Uh,
Hmm.
the last time a Canadian team even made the Cup final was 2011 against Vancouver.
Actually, no. 2021, Montreal made it.
Or sorry, let me rephrase that. I apologize. Thank you for correcting me on that. The last time the entire world saw a Canadian team in the Stanley Cup final was essentially the team that had won the most Stanley Cups in NHL history go down to a Tampa Bay team that essentially just ran roughshod all over. Um, I don't know, like what can be done with this team.
Well, honestly, you cannot keep running back the exact same thing and expecting different results.
Exactly.
We've
That's
seen
that's
that.
basically the definition of insanity at this point.
We've seen this core time and time and time and time again hit that brick wall, be it Florida, be it Boston, be it Columbus, be it Montreal. That getting out of the first round, getting out of the second round has been the Achilles heel for the Leafs since 2013. Since 2013, it's been this roadblock they keep finding and they keep stumbling into. And for a lot of it, Sheldon Keefe has been there for a bit of it. And Matthews, Marner, Riley, Nylander, they've been a part of a lot of this as well too. But at what point does MLSC say something has to change? And that's everything. That isn't just a trade here and there. That's Sheldon Keefe. That's Brendan Shanahan. I'm not gonna say Brad Treliving. He just got there.
Yeah.
Brad just got to Toronto,
Hmm.
but those who've been there for 5, 6, 7 years, question marks should be asked of them. That's Shanahan down, excluding Treliving, because at a certain point, going at a certain point, a good regular season, and 69 goals, this award, that award, it amounts for end of the day. You want to win a cup. You want to get to a cup final. You want to get to a conference final. If you're not doing that end of the day, what are we doing here? That something has to change for us to get past that roadblock because your fan base is going to be exhausted. Heck, they're already exhausted by seeing same old stuff, different year, different wrapping paper. Actually, no, same wrapping paper, just different year in the calendar. That cannot
Exactly.
continue. Like that cannot continue with guys. And again, and the clock isn't stopping. Clock's ticking on guys like I'm not saying in general. I'm saying in general in terms of age. Guys like Matthews, Martin, or whatever, Nylander. After a certain while, guys are gonna say, "Hey, if I can't win here, or if I can't get past second round here, is where I want to be for the next 6, 7, 8 years." And that should concern, even though guys right now say, I love Toronto, I love being here. After
Hmm.
a certain while, you don't want to keep losing. You don't want to keep ending your season after round two or round one. You don't.
Exactly. Like what? Like I did some research here, and there are a number of players. There are only a handful of coaches and a handful of GMs that have actually gotten playoff wins and playoff series wins in their tenure. Like obviously, we know Dave Nonis and John Ferguson Jr. are both need to be fired into the sun, as they've never won a play. They haven't like constructed successful teams for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like Ken Dryden has did a masterful job within 99 to 2004. Pat Quinn, of course, the legendary like great Pat Quinn and Pat Burns are like the only two coaches aside from Sheldon Keefe who have actually won a playoff series for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Um, Cliff Fletcher. Cliff Fletcher is a name that should be in Leafs lore in itself. Like he's got two conference finals to his name, two conference finals appearances to his name. How many GMs can go out there and say that, right? Especially within this day and age, within the last 30 years. Um, Kyle Dubas actually has a playoff series win. Now he's with Pittsburgh, and yet still no one has found a way to actually be able to replicate the same type of magic as Punch Imlach did back during the 60s. Like there
Yeah.
hasn't been a single captain within the last 10 years outside of Dion Phaneuf and John Tavares that have gotten the Leafs to the promised land since the days of 1967 with George
Mhm.
Armstrong.
I don't know if you saw, I don't know if you saw Sticks posting on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Sticks put on Twitter, take down these Jim Crow banners and put it back in Maple Leaf Gardens. Maybe it'll make them a little bit
Oh my
hungry
god!
here.
Oh my god! That made me laugh, but also that had me scared because I'm like, if you really get rid of those cup banners in the building, that essentially leaves the Raptors on the hook for Scotiabank Arena as it is, and like the Gardens already been Maple Leaf Gardens has already been retrofitted to make sure that Ryerson still has a team, or sorry, Toronto Metropolitan, TMU or whatever, right? The Leafs would have to either go play at Lakeshore or literally go play in the arena in Markham if they want to actually have like a winnable franchise. Because having it in downtown Toronto anymore it's not working. I don't know what's not working anymore. Is it the team? Is it the organization? Is it players? Is it the fan base? Is it the fact that you know the building is so corporate? The building is so entrenched in capitalism now that it's like it's essentially dead in a 100 level, and Leaf fans only apparently pay with their wallet, like cheer with their wallet now. Like it's downright ugly from every facet of Leafs Nation. Like the fans are pissed off. The media conglomerate in which covers the Leafs and TSN and Sportsnet, they're tired of it. They essentially want out of the game at this point. We're getting clowned not only by like say content creators, but also with other networks. TNT basically went off on us last night. ESPN has been going off on us with Stephen A. Smith and his bald head apparently making fun of the Leafs, comparing us to the Dallas Cowboys. And that's not a moniker that if I'm a Leafs fan, I want to be sharing with Dallas. Even though we're the richest franchise, like we're the worst fan base to be around because it's like, we're not affordable enough to actually be able to enjoy a game. And yet our minor league system is even worse because like they ended up getting eliminated today to Belleville. From the top down, it is a very rotten core, and something has to change. Something has to effectively change at this point. I mean, Keith Pelly is now controlling the reins in this situation, and like he's looking at this whole situation right now and like wondering like, okay, what pieces am I getting rid of? Like say if Toronto did not get their shit together by Tuesday, if there's not a game 6, I don't know what else to say. I feel like heads should start rolling at that point. But right now, like we have to look at it like this: like, what do the Leafs have to change in order to be able to actually even come home and at least force a game 7 on home ice? That's the biggest question that needs to be asked, and a lot of Leaf fans are essentially throwing in the towel at this point. Of course, if history precedes itself, Boston, of course, with the last 3 times Toronto and Boston have faced off, Toronto has effectively won Game 5 in all 3 of those series. Last year, Toronto also won Game 5, or no, let me rephrase that. Boston also lost Game 5 against Florida last year en route to a 3-1 series collapse. And we all know Boston is willing to make sure that it doesn't happen again. But ideally, I don't know what else needs to be done. Like, does Marner need to be kept off the power play or the first power play unit? Maybe. Does Joseph Wall get the start in net? Maybe, because Samsonov had like at least 3 chances to actually make something of himself. And he's essentially derailed himself to the point where he's not reliable anymore. If it goes to a game 6, like I'd find a way to redeem myself at home if I'm Samsonov, but obviously that may or may not happen depending on how Tuesday goes. Tyler Bertuzzi needs to figure out whether or not he's still a Bruin or a Maple Leaf. as stupid as that sounds, it's that's how serious this is. You know what I mean? Like, um, and will the real Morgan Riley please stand up? Is Matthews going to be healthy? Is Tavares still worthy of the C at this point now? Like, so many different questions are being asked in this situation, and it's like it's more questions than answers now. It's like, okay, what are the Leafs going to do? Like, okay, what's going to be changed? Will Keith make adjustment? Who's going to get fired first? You know, essentially for Leaf fans, if say if Tuesday does not pan out very well, you could be looking at a funeral of epic proportions for
Mhm.
the Toronto Maple Leafs.
You know, I do want to, but I know, I don't know if you saw or not, Dave, but Ryan Whitney, I'll say it right here, who was on Spittin' Chicklets. You know, I first of all, I'm not gonna get into too much of my thoughts on that show, but
Yeah,
Ryan Whitney having that platform, and putting on on his Twitter, which is still there, an IG image of a Bruin, I guess assaulting, well, sexually assaulting. I guess I put a warning
a
on that
polar
one.
bear.
A polar bear, which I guess supposed to be Carlton. That is, first of all, we talk about a sport that, you know what? There are other ways for you to convey Boston. There are other ways for you to convey Boston controlling that series. There are other ways for you to convey Boston running over Toronto in this series in large parts. For you to
Yes,
use sexual assault for that, you're disgusting, dude. That's not funny. That's not a punchline. Considering what sport we're in hockey, we've had issues with sexual assault, sexual
and domestic
violence,
violence.
to domestic violence towards women, children, guys in the CHL. That's disgusting, dude. That's sick.
It
That's not
really
funny one bit.
it's essentially disgusting. And the amount of comments that are left out there saying like, oh well, like it's funny and this, that, and the other. It's like, no, it's not funny for sexual assault. It's not funny for sexual assault and to be depicted as a joke. And again, with this group of people, like obviously there's no way, shape, or form of reasoning with these ass clowns. And unfortunately, this is how it's being depicted right now. Now, ideally, it is virtually upsetting, not only to the whole discourse of sexual abuse and sexual violence, but also it's just downright demeaning to the Leafs organization as a whole. And for the life of me, I don't understand why someone decided to use artificial intelligence to basically be a 16-year-old frat boy from fucking Texas.
Uh, that's that's Ryan Whitney, and that's Ryan Whitney, and that's the thing about that show and that company that they work for. That's what it's all built on, and I have no desire to ever work for them. I'm sure you have no desire to ever bring this show to that platform because we're better than that. That's
Mm-hmm.
beneath us. That's beneath a lot of people in hockey to ever associate with, and the fact that this game likes to associate with that is absolute shame. It's disgusting, disgraceful. And I don't care if people hate me for that. You know what? You don't like me calling them out. Too bad. So sad. But getting back to our main point on Toronto and Boston, end of the day, this is really a make or break series for someone like a Mitch Marner, who again, that's a guy who more anybody else really needs this series to go right for him and needs a deep playoff run. We really may be looking at the end of Mitch Marner in Toronto, like you said, Dave.
Mm-hmm. I've been a huge fan of this kid since 2016 when he effectively became a Maple Leaf. And I was excited because, or not even 2016, 2014. Mitch Marner was just fresh off of a Memorial Cup win with the London Knights. And I loved his playmaking abilities. It was like essentially the second coming of Doug Gilmour, right? I would have loved for him to at least be within top 2 of scoring and winning an Art Ross trophy, being the first Maple Leaf to do so in franchise history, and being the perennial playmaker that helps Matthews become the goal scorer that he is now. In the course of the last 8 to 9 years, or sorry, not even 8 to 9 years. Like Marner's been with the Leafs for what, 9, 10 years now, give or take.
He's getting close to that.
Yeah. In the tenure in which Mitchell Marner has been a Toronto Maple Leaf, he has not eclipsed the top 5 of playoff score, or not even playoff scoring, regular season scoring. He's shrank on more than 4 occasions in a playoff series. So much so that it's now a punchline rather than, say, a potential indication of like how good his skills are. Saturday effectively destroyed any ideology that Marner needs to stay a Maple Leaf at this point. Because for him to throw a hissy fit and throw his gloves on the bench, mind you, showing emotion actually helps you more than hinders you. And that's the most emotion I've actually seen from Mitch Marner, other than basically pout and whine and complain about how he's not getting touches and how they're basically effectively manhandling him on the ice. It's nice to see Marner actually finally get up and do something, but last night was too little too late. Or sorry, Saturday night was too little too late. You getting the lone goal, which was a beautiful goal, I might add. You getting the lone goal in a situation where it was basically win or don't fucking come back home. It is effectively sad to see that, and now with Toronto on the brink of an epic fail on Tuesday in Game 5. I think Toronto has effectively just destroyed any and all chance of, like, say, making things work. Now, mind you, could things work come Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening? And if by some divine miracle the Maple Leafs end up winning Game 5 to force a Game 6 on Thursday, Toronto really has to find a way to just get themselves out of the hole that they're in. Because if they can do it, then, like, okay, yes, fine. You take things one game at a time. If you can get yourself to Game 7 in Boston and finally conquer those demons that have been literally living in your head for the last 11 years, or living in the heads of Leaf fans for the last 11 years, like, maybe, just maybe, you might be able to do something. But right now, given the factors that, like, say, Matthews and Nylander are effectively the only 2 players that have actually given a damn when it comes to the Maple Leafs playoff run, currently speaking. Of course, Nylander has always been solid with what he's doing, and now Matthews is starting to step up. Right, and we haven't seen the emergence of Tavares, other than, say, last year when he scored the Game 6 winner against Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay to get the Leafs to the second round for the first time since 2004. I haven't seen much from Marner. I haven't seen much from Riley. Our goaltending with the exception of Jack Campbell, our goaltending has been atrocious lately. Joseph Woll, if Joseph Woll can actually step in and actually do the damn thing and take over, kind of the same way James Reimer did back in 2013, maybe we can actually get somewhere. Toronto has been outclassed, outgunned, outmanned, and outsmarted by John Montgomery and the Boston Bruins. Jim Montgomery Brad Marchand, David Pasternak, and the Boston Bruins franchise. Toronto has to find a way to break through all of that in order to be able to extend their season. And it's looking bleak. It really is, Avery.
Well, yeah, that was strong, strong words, Dave, and I see why you feel that way because ever since this show, and again, for you being a lifelong Leafs guy, and since this show launched, went on the air, this team has failed to live up to the expectations. This team has failed to, aside from last year, clear that next hurdle, take the next step. It's been same old, same old, same old. And if it happens again against the Boston Bruins, a team they have not beaten since the 50s. There's going to be a lot of question marks and a lot of uncomfortable talks happening within MLSE this summer.
If I'm Larry Tannenbaum and I'm Keith Pelly right now, I'm keeping an eye on this situation and I'm not letting it slide for one bit that significant changes need to be made. Now, Shanahan has been great up to about recently with the whole Dubas situation last year. Sheldon Keefe should be credited for at least something, as he's the only coach within the Leafs organization to actually get Toronto a hockey championship, at least on the men's side of things. Now, albeit it was the Marlies, but it was still something. Wouldn't you agree with that, Avery?
Yeah, no, you're right. A pro hockey franchise win is still a pro hockey franchise win. That's still a pressure win with the Marlies when they won the Calder Cup. That still counts as a pro hockey win for the men's side.
Exactly. And Dubas, although he got himself unceremoniously dumped by Shanahan last year, like he's still credited for that Calder Cup win. But ever since then, it's been like a lot of people felt that Dubas wasn't the guy. I still felt that Dubas was the guy, but he played his hand a little too early, and now he's essentially vacationing this summer while figuring out what to do with Pittsburgh, Sidney Crosby, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. We could have got Jason Spezza a cup, and we failed to do that. We could have gotten Wayne Simmons a cup. We failed to do that. We could have gotten Patrick Marleau a cup. We failed to do that too. There are a lot of players on this within this organization within the last 30 years who definitively deserve Stanley Cups. Outside of Brian Leetch, Joe Nieuwendyk, Ed Belfour, Alexander Mogilny, Michael Pekka, Vesa Toskala, Jason Blake, Joffrey Lupul, Mark Frazier, just to name some names. Oh, sorry, Jean-Michael Lyles, Nazem Kadri, Tyler Bozak, Carl Gunnarsson. The list goes on and on and on within the last 30 years. Oh, I can't even forget Matt Sundin and Wendell Clark. The amount of names that missed out on the opportunity to actually play for Lord Stanley is it's heartbreaking to even go through that list of names and not feel guilty to have a franchise that actually failed. And as I'm speaking right now, the New York Rangers have effectively eliminated the Washington Capitals in 4 straight. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the Leafs organization to figure things out. And if they don't do it, then essentially, could you see a rebuild into a full-blown rebuild in Toronto?
I don't see a full-blown rebuild because not guys like Nylander and Matthews are going to be down for that. They're going to sign up for a rebuild, but I think it's going to be a retooling where this team has to reevaluate what they want to do, what the goals are, and to an extent, I personally do think Keefe is out. I do think coaches that are on it. I do think you're going to see a couple of known names get looks. Craig Berube is a name. I personally would like to see his team bring in Jay Woodcroft. I think that's the guy that the team should look at more than Berube. But I know people want that old school gruff guy. But I personally think the younger guys will be more receptive to a Jay Woodcroft behind the bench next year. If that's if you're interested in going to Toronto.
Mm-hmm. There's potential talk of Joel Quenneville apparently being a name for the Leafs, but
He deserves zero.
exactly. Sorry, excuse me, I'm choking on something. Sorry about that, folks. Sorry. Apparently I ate some candy that had Leaf logos on it. I started choking the same way. So
Wow.
apparently the Leafs are a choking hazard, and so are Reese's Pieces. So sorry, that was a horrible joke, folks. Real talk though, yes, given Quenneville's history with the Chicago series, or no, with the Chicago Blackhawks, he does not deserve anything, at least in that nature. Are there other names involved that could potentially be, say, on the short list for the Leafs? Bruce Boudreau, maybe, unless he's already been hired by another team.
Yeah, Bruce Boudreau, he's someone who I definitely think that could be in the mix. Someone who I think, here's a name that here's a wild card name. Here's a name that I have not heard anybody float out yet in Toronto, at least, to be a Leafs head coach. I definitely think this team should be looking at Marco Sturm as head coach. He's done a really great job in the Kings organization, coaching on the Ontario Reign over the
Mhm.
past few years. He's someone who I think should definitely get a sniff, and I've heard nothing in terms of him for Toronto. So I think Marco Sturm should be in a short list as well too.
Yeah, that should be a situation in itself. I also feel like Jason Payne needs to be considered as well, because it's like if you want to make an eye opening statement, get the first black head coach in NHL history.
Well, actually, you'll be second. Actually, I'll be second because Dirk Graham. Dirk Graham was first. So
Or sorry, be the first black head coach in Maple
in
Leafs.
Leafs history,
Yes, but a lot of variables going into Tuesday night. Hopefully we'll be talking a little bit more positively as, say, Game 7 potentially goes down on Saturday, May the 2nd, or no, Saturday, May 4th, which would be next Saturday. Or sorry, this coming Saturday, excuse me, if you're looking at an actual calendar and not saying like, oh, well, Sunday doesn't start. Sunday is the weekend. The new week doesn't start till Monday. It's like, no, the week starts on Sunday. Get that through your heads, folks. But yeah, like say game 5 is Tuesday. Game 6 would be Thursday, May the 2nd, and then Saturday, May the 4th would be, say, the heavyweight fight that everyone's looking forward to. If you're a Leafs fan, you try and force a game 7. So it's going to be tough, but hopefully things turn around. And if things don't turn around, then effectively, let's go Blue Jays. So we'll see. We'll see how things go. All right. Anyways, Avery, what do you think? You think we had some fun tonight?
I would say so.
Excellent. As always, we're gonna say thank you for letting us grace the space in between your head top. Thank you for listening to this iteration of the Third Intermission podcast. We will be back on Sunday, May the 3rd, hopefully with the Leafs advancing to round 2. If not, there's going to be a very massive tirade from everybody involved on the show. There's going to be a lot of F-bombs dropped. There's going to be a lot of cursing. There's going to be a lot of like some venomous things that are going to be said towards the Leafs organization. So, folks, if you are a full-fledged Leaf fan, you might want to avoid that next episode. We will hopefully try and have this uploaded before Game 5, and if not, then expect to hear us Wednesday morning, or whenever you normally listen to us. So once again, thank you very much for listening, and until next time, this is Dave signing off from Third Intermission Podcast. Deuces.
Later.